Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to another computer science lecture. So we were discussing storage devices, and we covered almost half of the topics: the types of storage, the primary memory and secondary memory. Today we are going to discuss offline storage. Before we start, just remember that offline storage is a storage media, or it is that storage device which doesn't need to be plugged in or connected to a computer all the time. It doesn't need a constant power supply to hold its data. And the first one which we have on the list is CD. So let's start. CD stands for compact disc. Now CDs and DVDs, they both utilize the same technology for reading and writing data, so thus I have written CDs and DVDs all together. They contain a single spiral track which starts at the center of the disk and gradually move towards the end or edge of the disk. Data is stored in form of pits and bumps on the spiral track. One pit is known as a 0, whereas one bump indicates, or the higher ground indicates 1. A red laser is used to read and write data. CDs and DVDs are known as optical storage devices due to the use of laser light. They can be labeled R, means writable or write once only, or RW, which means rewritable. If a CD or DVD has been labeled RW, that means it can be you can write it or change the content on it for up to 5 times. Whereas the one labeled R, you can only write on it once and then you would not be able to change the data on it. The next which we have is DVD, a digital video disc. DVDs have higher storage capacity as they contain 2 recording layers, whereas CD only contains 1 recording layer. Thus, the number of spiral tracks on a DVD are 2. Now, both layers have a very thin spacer in between. It means both layers are joined on top of each other, or they are stacked together with a very thin spacer and a reflector in between. Read-write operations on the second layer are done by focusing the laser at a fraction of millimeter difference compared to the first layer. Now there are 2 layers on top of each other. Now when the laser has read all the contents of the first layer, it is slightly shifted so little that it is actually it is just a mere fraction of millimeter difference. It is shifted about 0.1 millimeter. The laser is shifted and then the laser is able to focus on the second track, going through the transparent spacer and onto the second layer which is below the first. Now this is a DVD or a CD, and on it, as you can see, there is a spiral track. It starts from the center and gradually move towards the end of the disc. Now this is a pit and this is a land, or this is a bump. When the laser is intensified, it leaves a small hole or a small pit on the surface of the disc, whereas when it is at a normal intensity, it does not makes a hole and that area remains flat. That is known as land or bump. Whereas wherever there is a hole or there is a short caving in, that is known as a pit. There is another type of DVD that is known as DVD RAM. It consists of multiple concentric tracks instead of a spiral track on the surface for recording data. This allows simultaneous read and write operations and can be read and write almost 1 lakh times or 100,000 times. They are ideal for archiving as they have a lifespan of over 30 years. So the difference between DVD and DVD RAM is that they have a very high capacity. They can hold the data for up to 30 years, and the major difference of technology is that DVD RAMs contain concentric tracks, whereas normal DVD contains a spiral track. The next offline device which we have is this is an example of how data is stored on a DVD RAM. As you can see, there are concentric tracks. Next we have is a Blu-ray disc. Now in a Blu-ray disc, instead of a red laser, a blue laser is used to carry out read and write operations. Why do we do that? Because blue laser has shorter wavelength as compared to red, hence it can store up to 5 times more data than standard DVDs. If you are using a laser light with shorter wavelength, that means that concentric tracks or the spiral tracks which you make, they would be of less width. That means on the same DVD you can add more tracks, and as you can see, it can store up to 5 times more data. Means one DVD is of 4 GB and one Blu-ray disc is roughly of 20 or more than 20 GBs. Blu-ray discs can have single or dual recording layers. There are two types of Blu-rays available. One is having a single layer just like a CD, and some versions are available with 2 recording layers just like in a DVD. Some of the Blu-rays also come equipped with a secure encryption system, so that whatever data is written on the Blu-ray disc, you cannot make a copy of it. If you try to copy from the Blu-ray, it will not allow you. Single layer Blu-ray discs can hold about 27 GBs of data, whereas dual layers can hold 50 GBs of data on one single disc. The data transfer for a DVD is 10 Mbps and for a Blu-ray disc is 36 Mbps, means megabits per second. This is the second difference between a DVD and a Blu-ray. So if you need to record higher volumes of data, then you use a Blu-ray disc, whereas if you simply want to store videos or images or movies, then you would go for a DVD. Whereas if you want to archive your data, such as the recordings for a security camera, then you would go for DVD RAM. Okay, so this concludes our offline storage devices. Wait, one is left. Sorry, 2 are left. The next thing which we have is USB flash memory. USB drives use solid state technology to store data, means they do not have any moving parts, they only have chips which store data. So okay, they are small, they are lightweight devices which are used to transfer files between computers, and they are connected via USB port on a laptop or on a computer. Digital cameras and cell phones use a similar solid state technology, which is known as extreme digital or secure digital cards. You commonly refer to it as micro SD or SD card. These cards store the images taken by the camera and can later be connected to a computer to transfer the files or to print images. All flash memories need to be handled with care. If you remove them abruptly without safely removing it first, then you may lose the data, or the data on it can be corrupted and lost forever. So whenever you are using a USB or a SD card, make sure that all of the read-write operation has ended before removing it from your device or from your laptop. That is why it is said that if you want to remove the SD card from your DSLR camera or from your cell phone, first turn off your cell phone, then remove the SD card. Similarly, if you want to put on an SD card in your cell phone, first of all turn off the device, put the SD card and turn it back on, otherwise it can become corrupted. The next thing which we have are portable hard drives. Okay, so the next thing which we have is portable drives. They are basically hard disk drives which hard disk drives which can be connected to a computer by a USB port instead of being mounted inside the computer. They do not need to be mounted inside a computer to work. They only rely on the 5-volt power that is supplied through the USB port. They are used as backup devices. Okay, so this is the only detail which you need to know about portable drives. Okay, so we have discussed all of the offline devices. Oh, one thing. This is how the dual layers of Blu-ray or DVD looks like. This is the first layer. This is a spacer in between, and then this is the second layer. Both layers are sandwiched together, and a spacer is a transparent spacer is there in between, so that the laser can cross from here and move on to the second layer. Let's suppose this is a DVD spinning, and when the laser strikes here, it reads this block of data, whereas if it is shifted slightly over here, it goes through the transparent spacer and it is able to read the next layer or the second layer that is beneath the spacer. So it is just, if it is shifted a little, then it is able to read the first layer, whereas if the angle of the the focus of the laser is tilted a little bit, then it is able to go through and read the second layer. The next which we have is virtual memory or a page file. The process of paging or swapping data between the virtual memory and the RAM is known it is created by now a virtual memory. It is also known as a page file, and it is created by a computer when it has many processes running at the same time. What happens is that RAM can sometimes become overloaded. Let's suppose you have 4 GBs of RAM in your PC. 1 GB would already be taken up by your operating system. Modern operating systems take at least 1 GB or 1.5 GBs of RAM all the time. Now if you have multiple programs open and then you try to open something huge such as Adobe Premiere or 3D Studio Max or Maya graphical softwares, or maybe AutoCAD software, then your RAM would not be enough to handle them. So the RAM would become overloaded with trying to process too many instructions at once. So the operating system will use a portion of the secondary storage, means whatever is your internal storage device, either HD hard disk or SSD, and it will designate it as a temporary area of RAM. This type of memory is much slower because the data is having to travel much farther than if it was contained within the actual RAM. This is virtual. Your hard drive does not turn into a RAM. It is just temporarily declared as a RAM, a portion of it. Usually the operating system allocates about 10 GB from each drive or 5 GB from each drive on your hard disk as virtual memory. The process of paging or swapping data between the virtual memory and the RAM slows down a PC. Obviously, if you have to constantly send the data from the virtual memory or the page file on the hard drive to the RAM, and then from the RAM to the page file, it takes a lot of read-write operations and it slows down your hard drive or your normal PC working. Paging is a process where the computer will move instructions that it does not currently need out of the RAM into the virtual memory and swap in instructions that it does need. A page is a fixed length, consecutive or contiguous block of data utilized in virtual memory system. Every block of data in a virtual memory is known as a page, and since a page file is a file which contains a lot of pages or a lot of blocks of data, it is known as a page file. Essentially, RAM is the physical memory, while virtual memory is RAM plus swap space or the virtual space on the hard disk drive or SSD. Now remember, having a page file or increasing the size of page file is a temporary solution, and it does not make your PC go faster. It basically just handles it basically just allows your PC to handle an emergency situation. If you want your PC to perform faster or become more efficient, you have to increase the size of your actual physical RAM. This is just a temporary solution. Making a page file is a temporary solution, or it is best for emergency situations. Okay, now a simple diagram of how virtual memory works can be this: that there is a RAM, and then there is a hard disk drive, and on the hard disk drive a small portion of it has been labeled as virtual memory, and then there is a double-sided arrow between RAM and virtual memory in order to show the swapping. You should know this diagram because your examiner is most likely going to ask you to draw this diagram, or ask you about virtual memory where you'll have to draw this diagram as well. If the examiner asks you about virtual memory, just write down this part, that it is created by a computer when it has many processes running at the same time, or write this point. Okay, and after writing this point, just make this diagram, that this point, sometimes RAM can become overloaded with trying to process too many instructions, so the operating system will use a portion of the secondary storage and will designate it as a temporary area of RAM, and then make this diagram and you'll hopefully get your marks. Now there are some benefits and some drawbacks for using virtual memory, and your syllabus requires you to know them. The main benefits of virtual memory are: programs can be larger than physical memory and still be executed. There is no need to waste memory with data that isn't being used. During error handling, like if there is an interrupt, then whatever was there in the RAM or whatever processes are not currently needed, they can be moved to page file. It reduces the need to buy and install more expensive RAM memory, although as mentioned earlier, there are limits to the value of doing this. You cannot have an unlimited amount of page files, or you cannot have a very big page file, such as you cannot have a page file of 50 GBs or something like 150 GB or 320 GB, and that does not mean that you would not need to upgrade your RAM. If you want to make your PC faster, instead of making a larger page file, it's better to buy more RAM. If you have a RAM of 4 GB and you have a page file of let's say 20 GB for each drive, 80 GB, then your PC would still work slower than if you upgrade your RAM to 12 GBs or 8 GBs. When using hard disk for virtual memory, the main drawback is disk thrashing. Now what is disk thrashing? As more and more data needs to be swapped in and out of virtual memory, then it means that there a very high rate of hard disk read-write operations or head movements are inflicted upon the hard drive. Means your the head for your hard drive needs to work at an astonishing pace. This can cause disk thrashing. Thrashing can be reduced by installing more RAM, reducing the number of programs running at a time, or reducing the size of the swap file. Another way of reducing this problem is to make use of a solid state drive rather than using SSD, but then again, SSDs have a limited number of read-write operations, so if you are using SSD as a virtual memory, instead of 3 years, your SSD would expire much sooner because you are using it as a virtual memory, and that means hundreds of read-write operations every day. So disk thrashing basically just refers to the number of head moments, the number of times the read-write head has to move back and forth, and if it moves back and forth too much, then it sometimes causes scratches on the your disks inside the hard drive or the platters inside the hard drive, or they may produce a lot of heat which can damage the data on the hard drive. As you know very well, magnetism can be a magnetic object can be demagnetized by heat. That is basic science. So on your hard drive, the disks inside your hard drive, data is stored magnetically. So if because of movement of read write head, a lot of heat is produced, then the charges or the magnetic properties of the hard disk platters can be reduced or vaporized all together, which can cause it to lose data. That is why disk thrashing is not a good thing. Okay, if more and more time is spent on moving data in and out of memory than actually doing any processing, then the processing speed of the computer will be considerably reduced. You are not actually doing any processing, you are just wasting all your resources and time in reading the data from the virtual memory and then writing the data into the virtual memory instead of actually doing a work. A point can be reached when the execution of a process comes to a halt, since the system is too busy moving data in and out of memory rather than doing any actual execution. This is known as the thrash point. Due to a large number of head movements, this can also lead to permanent or premature failure of a hard drive, and then you will not be able to get your data back. The next type of storage which we have is cloud storage. With cloud storage, files, data, documents, images, or whatever you can think of can be stored in a remote location. A cloud network or a cloud storage is basically a network of servers which are interlinked together, and your data is stored over there using the internet. Google Drive or Metabox are some examples of a cloud storage solutions. Users purchase some space on an external server that is located somewhere in the world and access it via the World Wide Web or the internet. The server is connected to the internet and can be downloaded from and uploaded to as necessary. The same data is stored on more than one server in case of maintenance or repair, allowing clients to access data at any time. Multiple copies are made so that your data is always there, and a backup is always live, so that whenever you try to access your data, you're able to get it even if one of the server is offline. This is known as data redundancy. Means your data is always available because of multiple servers. A good cloud storage would always store your data on multiple servers, so you would not encounter an error when you try to access your file. You would always gain access to your file. It is often used as backup, and it is also very good for sharing files with other people. Google Classroom is a very good example for that. Teachers are able to share lectures and notes with their students with the help of Google Drive. Another advantage is that data can be accessed from anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection. The disadvantages of using cloud storage is that if you don't have internet connection, then you cannot access your files. Plus, it is the job of the organization providing the storage to ensure the security of the data. As you might have heard, the Apple Cloud, the iCloud, has been breached many times, and a lot of secure data of its customers was leaked over the internet. Cloud storage is just as susceptible to hackers just as a personal storage is. As long as it is connected to the internet, a hacker can try to hack it and gain your personal information. The physical environment is owned and managed by a hosting company and may include hundreds of servers in many locations. They may be scattered all over a country, or they may be scattered over multiple countries. There are three common systems when it comes to cloud storage. Just like I told you before in the previous lecture as well, there are three types of cloud storage, but there is no difference in the technology they use. There is just limitation of how many users can access it. So these three types are public cloud. It is a storage environment where users and cloud storage provider are different companies. Then we have private cloud, means I have a company and I manage a cloud storage facility where only the data of my own company is stored and nobody else is allowed to access it except for my employees. That is would be known as a private cloud. Banks and multinational companies usually have private clouds, whereas public cloud can be your Google Drive or any web server, web hosting company. Then we have hybrid cloud. It is a combination of the two above environments. Some data resides in the private cloud and less sensitive or less commercial data can be accessed from a public cloud storage provider. For example, the website of a school or the website of a university, where students can log in to see their results or see the faculty members, whereas only teachers have the access to the back end where they can upload the marks of the students, or where they can where they can maintain the results, the attendance and other such and their own personal information on the same server and through the same website. But they both students and teachers, they both have different access levels. They both have different type of access on the server. Now there is a little summary of benefits and drawbacks of using cloud storage. User files can be accessed anytime, anywhere, from any device. There is no need for a user to carry an external storage device such as a portable hard drive or a laptop to carry their files. The cloud provides the user with remote backup. If a user has a failure of hard drive, or if their laptop or computer is damaged, they can still get their files from the cloud. The cloud system offers almost unlimited storage capacity. However, obviously for each GB that you use, you have to pay some amount to the company. Now the drawbacks are, if a user has a slow or unstable internet connection, they may not be able to access their files, and cost can be high if large storage capacity is required. Roughly for every GB that you get on a cloud server, you have to pay some dollars. So the more files you upload, the more you have to pay monthly or on an annual basis, depending on your subscription. Then also you have to pay your ISP, internet service provider, as well, because the more you're downloading or uploading to a cloud, the more bandwidth of your internet you are using. The potential failure for the cloud storage company is always possible. This poses a risk of loss of all backup data. Now let's suppose you're uploading your files to a cloud company in USA or a web hosting company in the Finland. It may be possible that one day that company just simply shuts down, and you would not be, obviously you would not be able to go to Finland or USA and claim anything from them. Your data would be lost forever, or your data is stored on the cloud may be an easier target for a hacker, like we have discussed before as well. It has happened so many times with the iCloud, whereas a hacker may have more difficulty accessing your personal computer or laptop to gain your data. Okay, so this concludes your chapter number 6 and the section number 2 of your current syllabus, or chapter number 6 of your old syllabus. I hope you have understood. If you have any problem, feel free to ask me. Take care. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.